Flood is known when the water inundates land that is normally dry. This is called a flood. Flood can be caused by a number of processes, but the dominant cause in Malaysia is rainfall. It happens when heavy rain falls into waterlogged ground. The rainfall cannot soak in, so runs down into the river. The river rises dramatically and bursts its banks, flooding valley floor. Recently, the cases that are happened in Malaysia are in Georgetown, Penang in November 5, 2018. Not only that, flood also happened in Kelantan and Terengganu in December 2014 to January 2015. More than 200,000 people were affected, while 21 were killed. These floods have been described as the worst floods in decades.
Now let's talk about the consequences of flood, but before that, this is some of reasons that cause flood.
Reasons for flooding. Rain. Whenever it rains heavily and there is less drainage, flooding occurs. Overflowing rivers. When there is more water upstream than usual, and as it flows downstream to the low-lying areas or floodplains, the excess water flows into the land, causing flooding. Breaking of dams. When there's too much water behind a dam, the force of water breaks it, causing overflowing of water, which results in flooding. Strong winds. Seawater can be carried by strong winds and hurricanes onto dry coastal lands, which results in flooding. Sometimes the winds carry rains by themselves. Tropical cyclones and hurricanes can produce rains which cause massive flooding.
Based on the video, we can see that this will lead to a lot of consequences, which is, firstly, it will lead to people missing, which means people mostly lost their family members during this incident because of the strong current, where they were swept away by the currents. And as example, recently in Indonesia at Bengkulu, the flood sparked by torrential rains have killed 29 people in Indonesia, and the same case happened in Malaysia at Kuantan in 2018 when 2 teenagers died due to the flood. Not only that, it will also affect other living things like animal crops, which become the main supply for people. So when flood occurred, a lot of animals will become the victims to the incident, where they will also be affected when they got drift caused by the currents. According to Berita Harian Indonesian, there are total 49 farmers who lost more than 300,000 ringgit due to the death of livestock and damage to infrastructure in the floods. So from this incident, it is not only related to the insufficiency of food, but most of the people who work in agriculture farming will cover lots of losses because their agricultural lands are destroyed due to crops being submerged in water. Flood also will damage the infrastructure and the property. This is because floodwaters damage land by erosion lines and stripping soil, as well as taking out whatever natural vegetation may be in the path of the flowing water. It has been proven by Star Online, where they stated that the unprecedented floods in Kelantan have caused an estimated 200 million in losses, where the floods damaged basic infrastructure in the towns of Kuala Kuala Kerai, Tanah Merah, Tumpat, Pasir Mas, and Kota Bahru. And also, the government must suffer for the damage of the some needed to repair roads, culverts, hill slope, and etc. But not least, Landslide also will become the problem when flood occurred. This is because, as we know, flood is an overflow of large quantities of water onto a normally dry land, where it can happen in many ways due to overflow of streams, rivers, lakes, and excessive rains. So when landslide occurred, it will lead to result more problem where instead of loss of life, economic decline. It will also impact on the river ecosystem where the soil, debris, rocks landing downhill will block the flows of the water with the river. This will become the reason why fish and the river's habitat can die, and the quality of water will become contaminated, which people can use it anymore as water supply.
There are two major causes of flood in Malaysia. Number 1. The geography of Malaysia that is exposed to the northeast monsoon from November to March. The heavy rain carried by monsoon wind will be exposed to the some state of Malaysia. Based on the map, and the most affected state over East Coast state that will receive most rain. Number 2. Illegal logging. Due to illegal logging, the number of trees will be decreased and causing the reduction of water reservoir inland and leak the river to receive the excess limit of water. This will cause the river water level increase. Although flood is inevitable in our country, government and citizens should prepare to face this disaster in order to reduce casualties and losses.
With floods washing up in several parts of the world, there is a lot of discussion about how to prevent and manage floods. It is all very political, with accusations of government bodies not doing enough of flood defenses being inadequate. As usual, climate change is carefully avoided as part of the official silence on the matter. For today, I just wanted to highlight 4 different methods to overcome flood. Some methods of flood control have been practiced since ancient times. These methods include planting vegetation to retain extra water, terracing hillsides to slow flow downhill, and the construction of floodways, man-made channels to divert floodwater. Other techniques include the construction of levees, lakes, dams, reservoirs, retention ponds to hold extra water during times of flooding. After this tragedy happened, a number of experts and politicians have stated various possible reasons for the tragedy. Some have said that the rainfall was unprecedented, while some others blame dams, which were all opened when they were nearly full, causing heavy floods downstream and greatly affecting the lives of the people there. While criticism and suggestions are natural after a tragedy of this magnitude, we should learn lessons from the experience. The question is, how do we avoid or minimize destruction after such an event? One of the methods to control flood is dams. The world over dams are constructed mainly for the purpose of irrigation, power generation, and flood control. While the first 2 roles are acknowledged, the role of dams in flood control has always been underestimated. The gates are large steel barriers that we can open to release water and control the flow. Dams cannot store all the water that flows into them. Flood mitigation happens when the flood water released through the dam gates is less than the rate of water flowing into the dam from the catchment and from rainfall. The dam temporarily stores some flood water, which results in the level of the dam rising above the drinking water supply level for a short time. This results in the peak in the release of flood water being less than the peak of the water flowing into the dam. This helps to reduce river levels downstream of the dam and mitigate the impacts of flooding on downstream communities. After the flood has peaked, the dam's flood storage compartment must be trained back to the normal drinking water supply level so the dam is ready for the next flood. Second is levee. Living near water is a wonderful thing except when there is a flood, so people build levees. A levee is a natural or artificial wall that blocks water from going where we don't want it to go. Levees may be used to increase available land for habitation or divert a body of water, so the fertile soil of a river or seabed may be used for agriculture. They prevent rivers from flooding cities in a storm surge. But if a levee breaks, the consequence can be disastrous. Levees are usually made of earth. The natural movement of a body of water pushes sediment to the side, creating a natural levee. The banks of a river are often slightly elevated from the riverbed. The banks from levees made of sediment, silts, and other materials pushed aside by the flowing water. Levees are usually parallel to the way the river flows, so levees can help direct the flow of the river. Levees can also be artificially created or reinforced. Artificial levees are usually built by piling soil, sand, or rocks on a clear, level surface. The importance of having effective flood early warning systems is widely accepted as one component to manage disaster risk. The Hyogo Framework for Action made early warning a priority for action, and the post-2015 Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction is expected to continue this focus. He said that continuing to further strengthen early warning systems and tailoring them to users' needs, including social and cultural requirements. A people-centered early warning system comprises 4 key elements, which is knowledge of the risk, monitoring, analysis and forecasting of the hazards, communication or dissemination of alerts and warnings, and local capabilities to respond to the warnings received. The Malaysian government also has installed 84 flood warning boards, 232 telemetric rainfall stations, 190 telemetric water level stations, and 217 flood sirens. The Department of Irrigation and Drainage Malaysia, DID, responsible for providing flood forecasting and warning service to the public, has established an internet-based national flood monitoring system known as InfoBanjir or www.infobanje.moa.my, via which rainfall and water level data can be collected for the whole country. Lastly is river flood defenses. Flooding from main rivers is caused by heavy rainfall upstream and can also be caused by flood surges up rivers from the sea caused by high tides, low pressure and strong winds. River flooding is often able to be identified well in advance, and flood alerts are able to be used to warn those living in flood risk areas in addition to any press reporting, and river flood defenses can be raised. The main options for river defenses are permanent solid flood walls and banks. These have the benefit of being permanently installed with minimal operation and maintenance costs. However, the visual amenity of rivers within an urban setting mean that these flood defense solutions can be obtrusive, especially if above 1 meter in height. Second is demountable river barriers. These river defense barriers normally comprise removable posts and beams that can be fitted along the side of a river in advance of a flood. There is no visual intrusion when not installed, but they do require a logistical operation to install and remove each time. Last is glass flood walls. These have the benefit of offering permanent flood defense whilst minimizing the visual impact. Glass flood walls can be incorporated with a solid wall to give greater heights of river flood protection, as well as with floodgates or demountable river defenses.
Now, I will provide an article and news to show flood occurrence in Malaysia. Thus, this article being reported by Sheikh Azhar on December 20, 2014 regarding flood that happened in Kelantan. It said that this is the worst flood had ever occurred in decade, which had involved almost 20,000 people have been displaced in relief center. Next, let's move to latest flood tragedy that happened in Johor Bahru as being reported on March 11, 2019 by Muhammad Farhan Shah. It said that a heavy downpour and strong wind has caused flash flood in several parts of city in Johor Bahru. The flash flood hit several areas such as Jalan Sukun, Jalan Limau Kasturi, Jalan Berbetang and Kampung Pasir near Tampoy. Now let's proceed to a footage that shows occurrence of flood in Malaysia on 2014. This which known as the worst flood season over 10-year period. This worst condition occur after rain fell continuously for more than 12 hours. 8 states have been affected due to heavy rain and subsequent flooding. It includes Kelantan and Terengganu, which became the most affected area. Another states such as Pahang, Johor and Perak also being affected. The flood had affected almost 300,000 victims who had been placed on relief center. The only transportation that can be used during that time was only boat. The heavy flood had caused devastating destruction of property and infrastructure, where amount damage reached Rm 1 billion. Due to high flood water, is making difficult for rescue mission and food supply to reach areas who had been affected. The flood also recorded a very high death rate of 21 people while 10 were reported missing. Government had given fund which is $140 million to spend as aid and flood subsidy.
The geographical position of Malaysia make it experience two monsoon wind seasons annually, the southwest monsoon and the northeast monsoon. The latter bring more rain resulting in regular flood every year. Knowing this raises some question. What have the authorities done to prevent flooding? Are the floods unavoidable? Do we have a proper flood mitigation system? Who is to be blamed when the floods occur? Have the citizens themselves done enough in flood prevention efforts? Who will be responsible for this? First, the government. The government has established the National Disaster Management Agency, aka NADMA, under the Prime Minister Department, taking over the responsibility from the National Security Council, in which covered at the stage of pre, during and post-disaster. The government also has introduced a better flood warning system and have used many ways to tackle the climate change. They also have increased spending on flood defences and introduced water storage areas. However, citizens should not be too dependent on the government flood prevention efforts. Despite facing flood every year, the mentality of the most Malaysians remain unchanged. Environmental awareness remain low and the rivers are still polluted. Although we cannot change the natural causes of the flood, we should do everything we can do to control the man-made causes. Humans are the real causes of the current flood. One can say that global warming and current climate change, which cause more intense storms and rains, as well as the stronger monsoon, are the main causes of the floods now. This might be true, but global warming is largely caused by humans when we use fossil fuels and produce greenhouse gases that trap solar radiation, which warm the earth and atmospheric temperatures. So, again, the root causes is human activities. To reduce flooding in the near future, we can do by just as what my friend Ifa said just now on the prevention measures. We can modify homes and business to help them withstand the floods, construct buildings above the flood levels, protect wetland and introduce plant trees strategically, and restore rivers to their natural courses. The end!